The discovery came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Dr. Elena Santos wasn't expecting to make history when she checked the deep-sea monitoring stations off the coast of Puerto Rico. The readings made no sense at first. Massive energy signatures at depths where nothing should exist except darkness and crushing pressure. "Run the diagnostics again," she told her assistant, Mike Chen, while rubbing her tired eyes. They'd been tracking unusual thermal patterns in the Puerto Rico Trench for weeks, but nothing like this. "Already did, twice," Mike replied, his face illuminated by multiple screens showing the same impossible data. "Whatever's down there, it's real. And it's big." Within hours, similar reports flooded in from deep-sea monitoring stations worldwide. Something was stirring in Earth's oceans, and it wasn't anything in humanity's scientific catalogs. The first contact didn't come through radio signals or spacecraft entering orbit. Instead, they emerged from our own oceans, massive structures of crystalline material that rose from the depths like ancient leviathans awakening. The Meridian Collective, as they called themselves, had been studying Earth for months from underwater bases, analyzing our civilization before making their presence known. Their ambassador, a being called Archon Villith, appeared simultaneously on every screen and display device on Earth. Its form was vaguely humanoid but composed of shifting, liquid-like crystal that caught and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. "People of Earth," the translation matrix converted its musical language. "We come offering friendship and advancement. Your world has caught our interest, not for its technology or strategic position, but for something far more precious, your water." The United Nations hastily assembled an emergency session. Dr. Santos found herself rushed to New York as part of a quickly assembled scientific advisory team. The Meridian's offer seemed generous. They would share their advanced technology, clean energy, medical breakthroughs, faster than light travel, in exchange for access to Earth's oceans. Just a small percentage, Villith assured the assembled representatives. "Your planet has more water than any we've encountered in this sector of the galaxy. Sharing such a small portion for such tremendous benefits seems logical, does it not?" Many world leaders were ready to sign immediately. The potential leap forward in human development was staggering. But Dr. Santos noticed something others missed in their excitement. The way the Meridian representatives seemed to shimmer more vibrantly near water sources, how their crystalline forms became more fluid, more animated. Working late in her temporary UN office, Elena discovered an anomaly in the water sampling data from near the Meridian bases. The molecular structure of the seawater was slightly altered, as if something was slowly processing it, changing it at a fundamental level. She took her findings to Dr. James Morrison, a leading quantum physicist who had been studying the Meridian's technology. "Look at these readings," she insisted, spreading out her data. "The water isn't just being removed, it's being transformed." Morrison's face grew grave as he analyzed the numbers. "This isn't a trade agreement," he concluded. "It's the beginning of a harvest." Further investigation revealed the truth. The Meridians weren't just using water as a resource. They were converting it into a form of programmable matter that powered their entire civilization. Earth's oceans weren't just valuable to them. They were essential for their expansion. When Elena and James presented their findings to the UN Security Council, the Meridian representatives' behavior changed instantly. The gentle shimmer of their crystalline forms became a harsh, sharp glare. "We had hoped to do this peacefully." Violet's voice had lost its melodious quality, becoming cold and rigid. "Your civilization is young. You cannot hope to understand the importance of what we do. The processing of your oceans will continue, with or without your cooperation." The threat was clear, but humanity's response was immediate and unified. Within hours, navies worldwide were mobilized. The UN Security Council issued a single defiant message: Earth's waters are not for sale or taking. Any attempt to forcibly harvest our oceans will be met with all necessary force. The Meridian's response came in the form of massive ships rising from every ocean, their crystalline structures dwarfing aircraft carriers. The water around them began to churn and change, becoming something other than H2O, something that responded to their control. As military forces worldwide scrambled to respond, Alina worked frantically with a global team of scientists to understand the Meridian's technology. If water was their power source, could it also be their weakness? The first battles were about to begin, and humanity was facing an enemy that could turn Earth's greatest resource into a weapon. But Alina couldn't shake the feeling that in the Meridian's desperate need for water lay the key to defeating them. Sometimes, the most precious resources could become the deadliest vulnerabilities. As night fell over New York, the waters of the harbor began to glow with an alien light, and the war for Earth's oceans began. The first attack came at dawn. The Meridian vessels, their crystalline structures catching the rising sun, turned the Pacific Ocean into a weapon. Massive waves, unnaturally controlled and precise, slammed into coastal cities. But humanity wasn't caught unprepared. Admiral Sarah Chen of the Pacific Fleet had spent the last 48 hours positioning her forces based on Dr. Santos' predictions. They need to maintain contact with large bodies of water, Alina had explained in the emergency briefing. Their ships can't stay airborne indefinitely. This insight proved crucial. As the Meridian vessels manipulated the ocean, they had to remain partially submerged. The human counterattack came not from the sea, but from the air. Squadron after squadron of aircraft struck the exposed portions of the alien ships, their weapons specifically modified based on the early analysis of Meridian technology. Their crystalline structure may be advanced, Dr. Morrison had told military leaders, but it's still susceptible to sudden temperature changes. The missiles carried payloads designed to flash-freeze sections of the Meridian ships, causing their carefully maintained molecular structure to become brittle and crack. But the Meridians weren't easily defeated. Their response was to dive deeper, using the ocean's pressure to protect them while they began their horrifying transformation of Earth's waters. Entire sections of the Pacific began to change, the water becoming something else, a programmable liquid crystal that responded to Meridian control. In her makeshift lab at Pearl Harbor, Alina worked tirelessly with a global team of scientists, analyzing the transformed water. "Look at this," she called to Morrison over their secure video link. "The molecular changes. They're not instant. There's a pattern, a process." "And if there's a process," Morrison replied, his excitement visible even through the grainy video, "it can be disrupted." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kai Patel, a marine biologist in Mumbai, noticed something strange in water samples taken near a damaged Meridian vessel. The transformation process seemed to falter in areas with high concentrations of certain marine microorganisms. "The phytoplankton," he explained to the global science team. "Their biochemical processes are somehow interfering with the Meridian's molecular manipulation." Alina immediately saw the potential. "We don't need to outgun them," she realized. "We need to outthink them." The next Meridian attack targeted the Indian Ocean, but this time, humanity was ready with a new strategy. As the alien ships began their water transformation process, military vessels deployed specially cultivated masses of marine microorganisms into the surrounding waters. The effect was subtle at first. The Meridians' control over the water seemed to weaken, their precisely controlled waves becoming erratic. Then, more dramatically, sections of their ships began to lose cohesion as the transformed water they depended on reverted to its natural state. Their entire technology is based on maintaining precise molecular control, Alina explained to Admiral Chen as they watched the battle unfold. "These microorganisms are like sand in their gears, tiny disruptions that cascade into larger failures." But the Meridians adapted quickly. Their ships rose from the waters. Using what processed liquid crystal, they had to create massive energy weapons. Cities along the coast came under direct attack as the aliens abandoned subtlety for brute force. The human response was equally dramatic. Nations that had been enemies weeks before now coordinated their efforts seamlessly. Russian submarines provided cover for Chinese aircraft carriers. American satellites guided Indian missile systems. European weather control technology, originally developed to combat climate change, was repurposed to disrupt the Meridian's atmospheric movements. They thought we were primitive because we hadn't mastered their form of technology, Admiral Chen observed as she coordinated the Pacific defense. They never considered that we might have developed in completely different directions. The battles raged across every ocean, but humanity began to see a pattern in Meridian tactics. The aliens were desperately trying to establish stable processing zones, areas where they could safely transform enough water to power their more devastating weapons. Elena and her team worked to map these attempts, and a disturbing picture emerged. They're not just fighting us, she realized. They're running out of fuel. Their ships can't maintain their structure without a constant supply of processed water. This revelation led to a daring strategy. Instead of trying to destroy the Meridian ships directly, human forces began focusing on disrupting their processing operations. Every attempted transformation was met with clouds of engineered phytoplankton. Every stable zone they tried to establish was seeded with organisms that made the water unsuitable for their technology. The Meridians' frustration became evident in their increasingly erratic attacks. Ships that had moved with fluid grace now showed signs of crystalline degradation. Their once precise energy weapons became unstable and unreliable. But victory still seemed distant. For every Meridian ship disabled, 2 more emerged from the deep-sea bases humanity couldn't reach. The aliens might be struggling, but they were far from defeated. And unknown to the human forces, the Meridian Collective had already called for reinforcements. As the sun set on another day of global battle, Elena stared at the latest data from their worldwide sensor network. There was something in these readings, something about the way the Meridian's technology interacted with Earth's complex marine ecosystem. If they could just understand it fully, they might find not just a way to fight back, but a way to win. The war for Earth's oceans was far from over, but humanity had already proven one thing. When faced with an overwhelming threat, our greatest strength lies not in matching our enemy's power, but in understanding and exploiting their fundamental weaknesses. The Meridian reinforcements arrived like shards of crystal rain from the sky. Hundreds of ships, each larger than the first wave, entered Earth's atmosphere in a display of overwhelming force. But Dr. Elena Santos barely noticed the light show. She was too focused on the microscopic image on her lab screen. The microorganisms aren't just disrupting their technology, she explained to the Emergency Scientific Council. They're evolving to feed on it. Every time the Meridians try to process our oceans, they're actually strengthening our natural defenses. Dr. Kai Patel's team in Mumbai had made a similar discovery. The phytoplankton exposed to Meridian-processed water were adapting at an unprecedented rate, developing new mechanisms to break down the altered molecular structures. Nature itself was fighting back against the alien intrusion. Admiral Chen, watching from her command center as the new Meridian fleet took position, received Elena's report with cautious optimism. "How quickly can we weaponize this?" "We already have," Elena replied. "We just need to scale it up." The plan that emerged was audacious. Rather than trying to fight the Meridian ship by ship, humanity would turn Earth's entire ocean ecosystem into a weapon. But first, they had to survive the reinforcements' initial assault. The new Meridian commander, Supreme Archon Nixus, was more aggressive than Vilith. The alien ships struck simultaneously at every major coastal city worldwide, using their processed water reserves to create weapons of unprecedented power. But humanity had learned from the first wave. Coastal defense systems, hastily developed based on Elena's research, sprayed clouds of engineered marine microorganisms into the air. When the Meridian's liquid crystal weapons hit these clouds, they began to break down. Impossible. Nix's transmission boomed across emergency channels. "Your primitive life forms cannot defeat our superior technology." Dr. Morrison, coordinating with defense forces from his underground lab, allowed himself a grim smile. "They still don't understand. It's not about superiority. It's about adaptation." The real breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a Japanese climatologist, discovered that the modified microorganisms could be distributed through Earth's natural water cycle. Every raindrop could become a delivery system for their biological defense. The water cycle is our greatest ally, she explained to the global science team. We can use evaporation and precipitation to create a planetary-scale immune system. The Meridians' response to their weapons' failure was to push harder, trying to process larger amounts of ocean water more quickly. But this only accelerated the evolution of the defensive microorganisms. Each attempted transformation created new strains of organisms specifically adapted to break down Meridian technology. Alina's team worked around the clock to catalog and enhance these evolutionary adaptations. They're not just breaking down the processed water, she reported. The newest strains are actually attacking the crystalline structure of the Meridian ships themselves. The effect became visible in dramatic fashion when a Meridian dreadnought, attempting to create a massive wave to destroy Sydney, began to dissolve upon contact with the water. The ship's crystalline surface turned cloudy, then began to crumble like sugar in hot tea. Nixus ordered his fleet to pull back from the oceans, trying to attack from altitude using only their existing processed water reserves. But Earth's water cycle followed them up. Rain clouds seeded with the defensive organisms created zones where Meridian technology simply couldn't function. They made one fundamental mistake, Morrison observed as they watched the aliens struggle. They assumed that because our technology wasn't like theirs, we were primitive. They never considered that Earth's biosphere might be more advanced than their crystalline computers. The Meridian fleet, unable to replenish their water-based fuel and facing constant degradation from Earth's engineered ecosystem, began to show signs of strain. Ships that had arrived gleaming like diamonds now looked frosted and cracked. But victory still came with a price. The Meridians, growing desperate, began to sacrifice smaller ships, deliberately detonating them to create massive energy discharges. Cities were leveled, coastlines were reshaped, and millions were forced to evacuate inland. Alina, working through another sleepless night, found herself staring at reports of the destruction. "We're winning the biological war," she told Admiral Chen, "but they're still capable of causing massive damage." "Then we need to take the fight to them," Chen replied. "Your organisms have given us a defense. Now we need to turn it into an offense." The plan that emerged was as ambitious as it was dangerous. Earth's militaries would intentionally draw the Meridian fleet into a massive confrontation, while Alina's team prepared to release a new strain of microorganisms, one that wouldn't just defend Earth's waters, but actively seek out and destroy Meridian technology. As humanity prepared for this decisive battle, Alina couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Meridians had come to Earth seeking to exploit what they saw as a primitive world's abundant resources. Instead, they had awakened a planetary defense system billions of years in the making. The collective adaptability of Earth's marine ecosystem. The question was, could humanity control the weapon they had created? The new aggressive strains of microorganisms were evolving faster than anyone had anticipated. In saving Earth from the Meridians, they might be creating a different kind of threat entirely. Operation Poseidon began with a whisper of rain. Around the globe, modified weather control systems seeded clouds with Alina's most aggressive strain of engineered microorganisms. The organisms were dubbed Poseidon's Kiss, microscopic defenders that could turn any water droplet into a weapon against Meridian technology. Admiral Chen, coordinating from the newly fortified underwater command center in the Pacific, watched as global weather patterns shifted according to their carefully orchestrated plan. "All command centers report ready," her communications officer announced. "Weather control systems are at maximum capacity." Alina, monitoring the biological readings from her lab, felt her hands shake slightly as she initiated the final sequences. They were about to unleash something that could never be called back. "Release protocols confirmed," she reported. "Organism distribution beginning." The Meridians, their forces already strained by constant exposure to Earth's evolving defenses, noticed the weather changes too late. Supreme Archon Nixus ordered his fleet to maximum altitude, trying to escape the approaching storm systems, but the clouds followed them up, driven by human weather control technology. The first drops of rain hit the Meridian ships like acid, eating into their crystalline surfaces. Ships that had weathered conventional weapons began to dissolve, their once perfect structures turning cloudy and brittle. But Nixus had one last card to play. "If we cannot have your waters," the alien commander's transmission crackled across all frequencies. "No one shall." The remaining Meridian ships began to power up their cores, preparing to detonate in a chain reaction that would contaminate Earth's oceans with their corrupted crystalline technology. Dr. Morrison, monitoring the energy readings, realized the threat immediately. If those ships detonate, the chemical reaction could poison the oceans for centuries. All our defensive organisms would be overwhelmed. But humanity had prepared for even this contingency. Admiral Chen gave the signal, and hidden submarines worldwide launched specially designed missiles. These weren't conventional weapons. They were delivery systems for a new strain of organisms, one that Alina's team had kept in reserve. "We call them Leviathans," Alina explained as the missiles deployed. "They're engineered to specifically target and neutralize Meridian energy cores. Once released, they'll multiply exponentially in the presence of Meridian technology." The effect was dramatic. As the biological agents reached the Meridian ships, the energy buildup in their cores began to falter. The crystalline structures that had channeled their power for centuries started to break down at the molecular level. Nixus, watching his fleet's destruction, made one final attempt to snatch victory from defeat. He ordered all remaining ships to converge on their deep-sea bases, planning to detonate them and at least deny humanity access to the ocean's depths. But Dr. Kai Patel had anticipated this move. His team had spent weeks studying the pressure tolerance of Meridian technology. "Their crystalline structures can't handle rapid pressure changes," he reported. "If we can force them to ascend quickly." Admiral Chen didn't hesitate. She ordered depth charges deployed near the Meridian bases, not to destroy them, but to create powerful upward currents. The alien ships, already struggling with failing systems, were caught in the artificial upwelling. The rapid pressure change shattered their weakened structures. Ships that had survived battles in space broke apart in Earth's oceans, their remnants dissolving in the engineered ecosystem humanity had created to defend their world. Supreme Archon Nixus's final transmission was cut short as his flagship, once a marvel of crystalline engineering, crumbled into glittering dust that dissolved in the rain. The remaining Meridian forces, their technology failing and their bases destroyed, began an urgent retreat from Earth's solar system. But victory came with consequences. The engineered organisms were reproducing faster than expected, evolving in ways Alina's team hadn't predicted. Reports came in of strange crystalline growths appearing in remote ocean regions, where the organisms had begun to modify natural formations. "We've created something new," Alina told the Emergency Science Council. "The interaction between our defenders and their technology has sparked an evolutionary process we don't fully understand." Dr. Tanaka's atmospheric monitors detected unusual patterns in cloud formation over areas with heavy organism concentration. The weather itself seemed to be changing, responding to the presence of these new life forms. "We won the war," Admiral Chen said during the final debriefing, "but we may have changed our world in the process." Yet even as they grappled with these new challenges, humanity had proven something extraordinary. When faced with superior technology, they hadn't tried to match it. They had instead turned their own ecosystem, the very thing the Meridians had tried to exploit, into a defense mechanism. The Meridian Collective, which had conquered countless worlds with their crystalline technology, had finally met their match not in advanced weapons or powerful shields, but in the adaptive power of Earth's simplest life forms, guided by human ingenuity. As Alina watched the sun set over the Pacific, its light reflecting off patches of water that now shimmered with a subtle crystalline quality, she wondered what other changes their victory had set in motion. The war was over, But humanity's greatest challenge, managing the power they had unleashed, was just beginning. 6 months after the Meridian retreat, Earth's oceans had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Dr. Elena Santos stood on a research vessel in the Pacific, watching schools of fish swim through water that occasionally crystallized and reformed, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. The ecosystem isn't just adapting to the changes, she explained to the UN Oceanic Council via satellite. It's incorporating them. The engineered organisms have become part of Earth's natural biological cycle. But this wasn't the most surprising development. Dr. Morrison's team had detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the deeper ocean trenches. The organisms hadn't just survived. They had evolved, creating crystalline structures that mimicked aspects of Meridian technology, while remaining fundamentally terrestrial in nature. It's like Earth's biosphere learned from the invasion. Dr. Kai Patel observed, "We're seeing the emergence of a hybrid ecosystem, part biological, part crystalline technology, but entirely Earth-born." Then came the first contact from other worlds. The transmission arrived through one of the crystalline formations in the Mariana Trench, using principles similar to Meridian technology, but with a distinctly different signature. "We are the Aquarian Collective," the message began. "We witnessed your defense against the Meridian Empire. We too are a water-world civilization, one that has long hidden from their harvesting fleets." More messages followed from other planets, worlds of oceans and storms that had developed their own forms of water-based technology, different from both Earth's and the Meridians. They had been watching, waiting to see if humanity would succeed where others had failed. Admiral Chen, now heading the newly formed Global Ocean Defense Force, recognized the opportunity immediately. "We're not alone in this fight," she told the UN Security Council. "There's an entire network of water worlds out there, each with their own technologies and solutions." The revelation changed everything. Earth's evolving ocean ecosystem wasn't just a defense mechanism. It was a bridge to a larger galactic community. The hybrid crystalline biological structures growing in Earth's oceans could communicate with similar formations on other worlds, creating an interstellar network independent of Meridian technology. Dr. Tanaka's weather studies revealed another breakthrough. The modified organisms weren't just affecting the oceans, they were creating a new kind of atmospheric processor. "They're cleaning our atmosphere," she reported excitedly. "The crystalline structures are absorbing excess carbon dioxide, helping reverse centuries of pollution." But challenges remained. Some of the crystalline growths were expanding too rapidly, threatening coastal areas. Others were creating unprecedented weather patterns that defied prediction. Elena and her team worked tirelessly to understand and guide this evolution, learning to communicate with the semi-intelligent networks forming in the depths. "We didn't just create a weapon," Elena explained to a gathering of global leaders. "We initiated a planetary transformation. Now we need to learn to work with it, to guide it responsibly." The Aquarian Collective proved invaluable in this effort. Their civilizations had millennia of experience working with water-based technologies, developing methods that worked in harmony with their oceans rather than trying to dominate them as the Meridians had. 1 year after the invasion, Earth had changed profoundly. Coastal cities now featured crystalline growths that powered new forms of clean energy. Weather patterns had stabilized into new rhythms, guided by the interaction between human technology and the evolved ecosystem. The oceans themselves had become a vast network of communication and computation, a living defense system that would make any future Meridian invasion impossible. But the greatest change was in humanity's perspective. The invasion had forced them to see their world differently, not as a resource to be exploited, but as a living system capable of extraordinary adaptation and evolution. The very thing the Meridians had tried to steal had become humanity's greatest strength and contribution to the galactic community. In her lab overlooking the Pacific, Elena received the latest data from the deep ocean monitoring stations. The crystalline networks were evolving again, developing new capabilities that merged biological and technological principles in ways that defied traditional classification. "We'll never be the same," she told Admiral Chen during their weekly briefing. "But maybe that's not a bad thing. We're becoming something new, not just humanity, but Earth itself." The Admiral nodded, watching the sun set over waters that shimmered with an inner light. "The Meridians wanted our oceans," she said. "Instead, they gave us the stars." As night fell, the crystalline structures in the deep oceans pulsed with bioluminescence, sending messages to distant worlds. Earth had not only survived its first major interstellar conflict, it had emerged transformed, ready to take its place in a larger community of water-world civilizations. The Meridian invasion had intended to exploit Earth's resources. Instead, it had catalyzed an evolution that would reshape not just our world, but our understanding of what was possible when technology and nature worked in harmony rather than opposition. Humanity had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all. True strength lies not in dominating nature, but in learning to adapt and grow with it. The oceans that had nearly been stolen from them had become the foundation of a new kind of civilization, one that bridged the gap between the biological and the technological, the earthly and the cosmic.